Good morning and welcome to the South Carolina Public Service Commission. Today is Monday, August 11th, 2025, and it's approximately 10 a.m. We are here today on dockets 2025 16E and 2025 17E, Duke Energy Carolinas and Duke Energy Progress 2025 avoided cost proceeding. Present in the hearing rooms, Commissioner Belser, Commissioner Caston, Commissioner Carol Lee Williams, Commissioner Thomas, and Vice Chair Williams, and I am Chair Delton Powers. Commissioner Brett is an educational training, will not participate in this hearing. Ms. Westerhill, if you would, please identify and explain today's proceeding.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. The hearing before you today, as Chairman just mentioned, concerns docket numbers 2025 16E and 2025 17E. These dockets concern the review and approval of the two applications filed respectively by Duke Energy Carolinas LLC and Duke Energy Progress LLC on March 3rd, 2025, pursuant to South Carolina Code Section 58-41-20, subsection A. Both are avoided cost applications for each company, which seek approval of the company's avoided cost rates, terms, and conditions available to qualified facilities under in South Carolina under Section 210 of the Public Utility Regulatory Policies Act of 1978. These include, but are not limited to, the review and approval of the avoided cost methodologies, including the use of the Peaker methodology to calculate, respectively, DEC and DEPS avoided cost rates, as most recently approved in Order 2023-861, and corresponding tariffs, updated standard forms, including the standard offer form, form contract, power purchase agreement, and the notice of commitment form. This hearing was scheduled and noticed by the clerk's office to begin today at 10 a.m. on Monday, August the 11th, 2025, and it is subject to continue through the remainder of the week if necessary and as needed upon the call of the chair. Mr. Chairman, upon inquiry of all participating counsel of record, counsel for parties of record are present and available for your call of appearances. There is one preliminary matter related to the a request by the Office of Regulatory Staff and the companies and others concerning an executed stipulation. The docket is ready to proceed at your call, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Thank you very much. Now, would the parties, beginning with the company, please introduce themselves for the record?
Sure. Good morning, Chair Powers, Vice Chair Williams. I'm Nathan Haber here on behalf of Duke Energy Carolinas and Duke Energy Progress. Joining me today is Sam Welburn, my co-counsel. Thank you.
Good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
Sasiba.
Chair Powers, Richard Witt from the Witt Law Firm for Sasiba, and John Burns will not be participating today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
ORS.
Good morning, Chair Powers. Donna Rainey on behalf of the Office of Regulatory Staff, and with me is Stig Rasmussen.
Thank you very much. ORS, you can go ahead and make your presentation if you would.
Good morning, Chair Powers, Vice Chair Williams, and members of the Commission. On Tuesday, July 2nd, 2025, ORS filed the stipulation in these dockets that was entered into by Duke Energy Carolina, Duke Energy Progress, and the Office of Regulatory Staff. In testimony, stipulating parties maintained distinct interests and presented different positions. However, in the spirit of compromise and in good faith, stipulating parties engaged in negotiations, which resulted in the stipulation that resolved all matters in these proceedings. Chair Powers, ORS moves that the stipulation in these dockets be entered into the record as the first hearing exhibits.
All right, the stipulation that has been mentioned and provided in the record will be identified and marked as exhibit number 1.
Thank you, Chair Powers. ORS has a few brief comments, if you would allow it. Thank you. In the stipulation, stipulating parties agreed to engage in discussions in advance of the company's next avoided cost proceedings. During those discussions, stipulating parties will further evaluate and analyze granular data and assumptions used to support their respective positions. All witnesses in these proceedings will support the stipulation. Witnesses Gann, Snyder, and Salter filed stipulating testimony and will discuss key terms of this stipulation. ORS believes approval of this stipulation is in the public interest and requests the commission approval of the stipulation as presented. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. We're dealing with a stipulation, not an agreement. So first I'll go to the company. Is there anything that you feel has not been covered in the stipulation that needs to be addressed before we begin the hearing?
No, Chair Powers.
Do you feel all parties have joined us and done this in good faith and it's in the best interest of the public?
Yes.
Thank you. Sasiba.
Sasiba didn't take a position on the stipulation.
All right. Sasiba has no objection to the stipulation.
No, we have no objection also.
All right. Thank you very much. And ORS, you've stated your position. All right. Is there anything else we need to address before we begin?
Nothing from companies.
All right. Well, if you would, it's your case.
Thank you, Chair Powers. The companies call Mr. Glenn Snyder and Ms. Whitney Gann to the stand.
Come forward.
Raise your right hands, please. Do you solemnly affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Good morning. Mr. Snyder, I'll start with you first. Could you please state your full name for the record?
Glenn A. Snyder.
And by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I am employed by Duke Energy as Managing Director of Integrated Resource Planning and Analytics.
And how long have you been employed by Duke Energy and working on matters related to PURPA?
I've worked for Duke Energy or one of its predecessors since 1992. While I am not an attorney, I have become familiar with Section 210 of PURPA and FERC's regulations implementing PURPA through my role at the companies, and have testified multiple times before this commission and the North Carolina Utilities Commission on PURPA avoided cost issues, including in the company's avoided cost proceeding before this commission in 2019 and 2021.
And Mr. Snyder, did you prepare or cause to be prepared 43 pages of direct testimony that were pre-filed with the commission in this proceeding?
Yes.
And do you have any changes to that, to your direct testimony at this time?
No, I do not.
If I were to ask you the same questions today that were asked in your pre-filed direct testimony, would your answers remain the same?
Yes, they would.
Chair Powers, I would ask that Mr. Snyder's pre-filed direct testimony be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand.
The pre-filed direct testimony of Glenn Snyder will be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand.
Thank you. Mr. Snyder, did you also prepare or cause to be prepared one publicly filed exhibit titled Snyder DEC/DEP Exhibit 3 that was attached to your pre-filed direct testimony?
Yes.
And do you have any changes to that exhibit at this time?
No, I do not.
Chair Powers, I would ask that Mr. Snyder's one publicly filed exhibit be entered into the record as the next composite hearing exhibit.
All right. The exhibit identified as exhibit number 3, combined DEC, DEP by Mr. Snyder, public will be entered in as exhibit number 2.
Thank you. And Mr. Snyder, did you also prepare or cause to be prepared 3 confidentially filed exhibits titled Snyder DEC Exhibit 1, Snyder DEP Exhibit 1, and Snyder DEC/DEP Exhibit 2 that were attached to your pre-filed direct testimony?
Yes, I did.
And do you have any changes to those exhibits at this time?
No, I do not.
And Chair Powers, I would ask that Mr. Snyder's confidentially filed exhibits be entered in as the next composite hearing exhibit and that it remain under seal.
All right. The pre-filed exhibits of witness Snyder identified as Snyder DEC Exhibit 1, confidential in public, Snyder DEP Exhibit 1, DEP Exhibit 1, confidential in public, and Snyder Combined DEC DEP Exhibit 2, confidential in public, identified will be marked for identification and placed in the record as Exhibit number 3. The confidential version of these exhibits shall remain confidential unless or until the commission rules that such information is not entitled to protection from public disclosure, or if the requesting parties agree that such information is no longer confidential or proprietary.
Thank you, Chair Powers. Mr. Snyder, I'm going to move to your stipulation testimony. Mr. Snyder, did you prepare or cause to be prepared 6 pages of stipulation testimony that were pre-filed with the commission in this proceeding?
Yes, I did.
And do you have any changes to your stipulation testimony at this time?
No, I do not.
All right. And if I were to ask you the same questions today that were asked in your pre-filed stipulation testimony, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Chair Powers, I would ask that Mr. Snyder's pre-filed stipulation testimony be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand.
The pre-filed stipulation testimony of Mr. Snyder will be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand.
Thank you. And Mr. Snyder, do you have a copy of a summary of your stipulation testimony?
Yes, I do.
And could you read that summary now, please?
Certainly. Chair Powers, Commissioners, good morning. Thank you for having us here today. My stipulation testimony supports the provisions of the stipulation between the companies and ORS, specifically with respect to the avoided cost methodology and rate calculation aspects of the agreement. I explain that the companies and ORS have compromised and resolved the disputed matters at issue between them and agreed to support and recommend that the Commission approve the company's proposed avoided cost methodology as described in the company's application and supported by my direct testimony to calculate both the company's avoided energy cost and avoided capacity costs in this case. Applying the Peaker method, ORS and the companies agree and recommend the Commission approve the company's proposed energy and avoided capacity rates for DEC and DEP as set forth in the company's respective Schedule PP and large QF tariffs and attached to the stipulation as Stipulation DEC Exhibits 1 and 2 and Stipulation DEP Exhibits 1 and 2. Going forward, ORS and the companies agree to engage in good faith discussion in advance of the company's 2027 avoided cost filing to discuss their approach and in developing the company's 2027 avoided energy and capacity rates, including model inputs and assumptions. I believe the stipulation represents a just and reasonable resolution of the issues in this proceeding and results in avoided energy and avoided capacity rates that are reasonable and consistent with the requirements of PURPA and Act 62. This concludes the presentation of my testimony summary.
Thank you, Mr. Snyder. We'll turn to you, Ms. Gann. Could you please state your full name for the record?
Thank you. My name is Whitney Gann.
Thank you. And by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by Duke Energy as the Director of Business Development and Compliance.
And how long have you been employed by Duke Energy and working on matters related to power purchase agreements?
I've been employed by Duke for 15 years. I started my current role in June of 2024. In this capacity, I'm accountable for the power purchase agreements that Duke enters into with third-party suppliers. Prior to this role, I also worked with PPAs. I led our wholesale rates team. This wholesale rates team is accountable for the FERC jurisdictional formula rates that Duke charges to wholesale power supply as well as wholesale transmission, or the OAT, Open Access Transmission Tariff customers.
Ms. Gann, did you prepare or cause to be prepared 24 pages of direct testimony that were pre-filed with the commission in this proceeding?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes to your direct testimony at this time?
No, I do not.
And if I were to ask you the same questions today that you were asked in your pre-filed direct testimony, would your answers be the same?
Yes.
Chair Powers, I would ask that Ms. Gann's pre-filed direct testimony be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand.
The pre-filed direct testimony of Ms. Gann will be entered in the record as if given orally from the stand.
Right. Ms. Gann, you had a number of exhibits, so I'm going to take a breath before I ask
Read 'em
this
out.
question. Okay. Ms. Gann, did you also prepare or cause to be prepared 10 publicly filed exhibits that were attached to your pre-filed direct testimony? And for the record, those exhibits were titled GAN DEC Exhibit 1, GAN DEP Exhibit 1, GAN DEC Exhibit 2, GAN DEP Exhibit 2, GAN DEC Exhibit 3, GAN DEP Exhibit 3, GAN DEC Exhibit 4, GAN DEP Exhibit 4, GAN DEC/DEP Exhibit 5, and GAN DEC/DEP Exhibit 6.
Yes, I supported all of those exhibits in support of my testimony.
Thank you. And do you have any changes to those exhibits at this time?
No.
Chair Powers, I would ask that Ms. Gann's 10 publicly filed exhibits be entered into the record as the next composite hearing exhibit.
The pre-filed exhibits of witness Gann identified as DEC Exhibits 1 through 4, DEP Exhibits 1 through 4, and joint DEC DEP Exhibits 5 and 6 will be entered into the record combined as Exhibit number 4.
Thank you, Chair Powers. Ms. Gann, we'll move to your stipulation testimony.
Okay.
Did you prepare or cause to be prepared 4 pages of stipulation testimony that were pre-filed with the commission in this proceeding?
Yes.
And do you have any changes to your stipulation testimony at this time?
Yes, I do have one minor ministerial correction to make, and it's on page 3, line 8 of my stipulation testimony. On that page, there is a reference to GAN DEC/DEP Exhibit 4. Instead, this should be Exhibit 5. It should read GAN DEC/DEP Exhibit 5.
Do you have any other changes to your stipulation testimony at this time?
No other changes.
And if I were to ask you the same questions today that you were asked in your pre-filed stipulation testimony, would your answers remain the same?
Yes.
All right. Chair Powers, I would ask that Ms. Gann's pre-filed stipulation testimony be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand.
The pre-filed corrected stipulation testimony of Ms. Gann will be entered into the record as given orally from the stand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Gann, do you have a summary of your stipulation testimony?
I do.
Could you read that summary now?
Sure. The purpose of my stipulation testimony is to support certain provisions of the stipulation between Duke Energy Carolinas, LLC, Duke Energy Progress, LLC, and the South Carolina Office of Regulatory Staff. In particular, I support DEC's and DEP's updated standard offer, purchase power tariff, also known as Schedule PP, and the updated large QF tariff, Schedule PPL, which were revised from the version filed with the company's application to correct a scrivener's error to the solar integration service charge in these documents. In addition to agreeing and recommending that the Commission approve the company's avoided cost methodology and avoided energy and capacity rates, as supported by Mr. Snyder, I note that ORS and the companies also agree and recommend that the Commission approve the company's proposed contracting documents. These specific contracting documents are DEC and DEP's standard offer power purchase agreement, standard offer terms and conditions, large QF power purchase agreement, and the notice of commitment form. Like Mr. Snyder, I believe the stipulation represents a just and reasonable resolution of the issues between the stipulating parties in this proceeding. This concludes the presentation of my stipulation testimony summary.
Thank you, Ms. Gann. Chair Powers, I don't want to speak for other parties, but it's my understanding neither parties are going to be doing any cross today, but Mr. Snyder and Ms. Gann are available for questions from council and the commission.
Thank you. I will double check. How about that?
That sounds good. Thank you.
So, Steve, any questions?
No questions, but thank you.
ORS.
No questions.
All right, thank you. Commissioner questions. Commissioner Belser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning.
Good morning.
I just, Ms. Gann, would you please direct me to the Scrivener's error that was corrected in the agreements? Just, I want to make sure
Absolutely.
I've got it.
I know, it's a little bit buried in there, so let me, it's in my stipulation testimony. Page 3, line 8. Let's see if I have it marked.
I'm sorry, I was actually asking for it in the document, not in your I don't see it in your testimony, but I was asking for where it is in the exhibit.
The exhibit itself is accurate. The update is the reference
Okay.
in my testimony to a specific exhibit. So the exhibits themselves have remained unchanged.
I thought there was testimony that there was a Scrivener's error in the exhibits that was corrected.
I
Is
see
that
what
from
you're
the
saying.
prior exhibits or
Yes, so in
from what
the-
was filed in the? I was taking that as there's an error from what was filed in the application to what was filed in the stipulated exhibits.
I follow what you mean, Commissioner Belzer, absolutely. So the two corrections, if you open up the two exhibits to my stipulation testimony, it's the Solar Integration Service Charge, the SISC, and you'll see that there was an amount that was put in that spot in the application, and it has been updated.
Okay,
to-
you're not going to give me the page
Let me
of your
find it.
exhibit. That's what I'm asking for.
Yes, ma'am. Here we go. Let me find it myself. Here we go. Stipulation testimony. Well, give me a moment if you would. I need to remember where it is filed in here. Do you know which tab our stipulation testimonies are on? I think these are our regular initial ones. Oh, here we go. The mini tabs. Okay, so in the, thank you for your patience as I had to
No,
find
thank
that.
you for looking.
Sure. So in DEC Exhibit 1, the stipulation exhibit, looks like it's on page 2. Check me here, Glenn, make sure I'm. And about 3/4 of the way down the page, you'll see Solar Integration Services Charge.
Okay, I'm with you.
So that is where the DEC correction was made.
Okay. Is it only in the DEC?
It's also in DEP, so let me
Okay.
give you that line. So in the DEP exhibit, this is stipulation DEP Exhibit 1. This one is on page 3 of 7,
I need to get to the red line.
and this one is about midway down the page. Again, the Solar
Got it.
Integration
Okay.
Services Charge
I
section.
just want to make sure I was in the right, looking at the right thing. Thank you
Mhm.
very much. I appreciate
Absolutely,
it.
sure.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Belser. Commissioner Caston.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Not trying to pick a fight, but I kind of wanted to look at the direct testimony, just some questions that I had. And Mr. Means in particular, where he talks about the avoided energy cost. Peaker method is one of the commonly accepted approaches. The results produced using the company's application of Peaker method do not reflect industry best practices. And he talks about the most accurate and economically sound way to estimate avoided energy cost is to use marginal energy cost, and he talks about, you know, real-time, hour-specific value that reflects. And I think at a certain level, I get all this, but that certain level it's not at the depth that I can tell you I really understand all that. So I guess what I'm asking you both, if you can answer, one, do you agree that the Peaker method is not best practices in calculating energy costs? And I think he goes on to say that reflects the system's actual conditions, and let's say hourly marginal energy cost offer a simpler and more accurate basis for setting avoided energy rates. Is what he's saying more simple?
I'll take this one if I could. So a couple of questions there. Let me see if I can break it down. I think Mr. Ming, and I don't want to speak for him, but in our discussions leading up to the filing and in past proceedings, I think we both agree that the Peaker method itself is an industry accepted best practices methodology. And then where we tend to have some level of disagreement is in the specific application of that Peaker method. So with that said, I think we're both in agreement that the Peaker method is widely used throughout industry as a FERC accepted methodology for the calculation of avoided cost. Then when you move past the Peaker method, you're saying, how do we implement that avoided energy benefits that but for the QF, customers would have otherwise paid from production of energy from the utility system? There's a subtle difference between Mr. Ming's approach and what the company believes was a best approach. And it has to do with the nuances of how you model a production cost run and calculate that avoided energy value. Mr. Ming was supporting a single production cost run where you then go into the model and use what's called the marginal cost coming out of that model, or the next kilowatt of sold energy in a single run. The company's long established practice is to actually do two production cost runs, one without any QF and a second run with 100 megawatts of free generation in every hour. And you take the difference between the two as the basis for that marginal. Rather than a single run, we use two. There's some really nuanced differences in the two and how the model treats each of them in terms of the avoided energy, the avoided fuel, the avoided starts, the avoided variable O&M. And we had some differences in that, but when we worked through the stipulation, and we found that when we made some adjustments to the model to really focus in on what's truly avoidable, that the two methodologies did not yield substantially different results. And hence we were able to agree that our longstanding approach was appropriate in this case, and that it was something we would continue to evaluate going into our next filing.
Okay, thank you. And so what I'm hearing is it basically comes down to the model and the inputs and how you incorporate those into the model. And you know, when I probably just read more into what he has, you know, real-time, hour-specific value, and thinking only at the level I know how to think. And I'm thinking, how would you do that? You know, how would you do a real-time, hour-specific, and does it have some instrumentation? But all this is really nothing more than inputs in the model and how you do it.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. It is sometimes confusing because real time is really our as available rate, and it's after the fact what actually happened in real time. I believe what we're looking at here is the forward forecast of what those real-time prices might be going out 2, 5, or 10 years in our respective rate filings for a 2, 5, and 10-year forward rate. And so what we do is we have hourly models. You know, the unit commitment and dispatch model is 8760 model. So it looks at the whole system, the weather normal load forecast, and our generation resource portfolio consistent with our IRP. And it says how will it commit and dispatch units going out into the planning horizon. And to your point, Commissioner Caston, what we're talking about here is what will those future avoidable energy prices be using one of the two different methodologies, the one that we've used for a number of years versus the one Mr. Ming is proposing. And those are, to your point, just nuanced differences in how you approach the forward-looking modeling. But in either case, it is a forward-looking forecast and not, a real-time, after-the-fact measurement of those energy prices.
Good, and the good news is, it seems all parties okay with it.
Yeah, we spent a lot of good and productive time meeting with the ORS and their consultant, Mr. Ming, prior to the filing, and shared our data and our analytics, and showed that using his approach and our approach did not yield materially different results. We feel that the precedent that this commission has already approved this approach. It's also used, similar approaches are used in other ways, EE and DSM and other approaches. So we really are supportive of our approach, but we agreed with ORS that we'll continue to look at this. Going into the 2027 filing, we will examine Mr. Ming's approach again and ensure that we still are not seeing substantial differences or that we're able to explain those. But at this time, both parties agreed that the rates as filed using the company's approaches are just and reasonable for consumers.
Thank you, and that truly was helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner Caston. Before we go with further commissioner questions, just so it's clear for the record and for the court reporter, Commissioner Belser's questions, does that change the stipulated corrected testimony or change any numbers or anything that needs to be corrected in the record? Commissioner Belser, do you see where that?
No, I don't think it does. All I was wanting I just wanted to be pointed to the specific places in the exhibits where the Scrivener's error occurred to make sure I was looking at the right thing. That's all I was asking. It didn't have anything to do with the number or anything. Just show me in the exhibit what that Scrivener's error was, and that's what Ms. Gann did. I mean, yes, so I'm fine. I don't think it changes anything.
Thank you. Ms. Wheat, do you need anything further from that? Thank you very much. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, it's
while it was still spinning around. And
absolutely, and if it helps the commission, the exhibits as attached to the stipulation are the correct exhibits, the updated exhibits for approval. So nothing in those numbers have changed. The
Thank you very
corrections are
much.
included there. Thank you.
Further commissioner question, Commissioner Williams.
Thank you, Chair Powers. Thank you for being here and for giving us this, glimpse into your world, and I appreciate the effort that you and ORS have made in terms of the substance of this avoided cost proceeding. My question is a very big picture question compared to the prior ones, and it's more just wondering what you all are seeing as avoided cost proceedings as have evolved over time as the world that they are speaking to is changing. Can either of you speak to the changes you've observed, particularly Mr. Snyder, as you've done this several times, and perhaps Ms. Gann, as you've been involved as well?
Yeah, well, it certainly is a dynamic environment, Commissioner Williams, so it's a good question. I mean, as you've seen in avoided costs and in IRP proceedings, some of the fundamental drivers of what is that value that a QF creates is based on what fuel prices are, what are they avoiding in terms of the variable operating cost? And then also for capacity value, what is that cost of the peaker? And so what we've seen in recent cases is in this environment, there has been significant increase in the cost of a peaker. So that capacity value has increased pretty dramatically with the cost of the peaking technology going up, and energy costs have been, not as volatile. Gas prices have sort of calmed over the last several years, but as our load goes up, we're higher in our marginal stack. So the higher the load, you're going deeper into your stack, and so that does also influence the energy costs. So we are seeing some small increases in that, and of course on the QF side, you've had the IRA and now the revisions in the IRA. So the dynamics of the QFs themselves, of course, this is just saying what value, irrespective of their cost, what's the value? That's what this rate proceeding is determining. But we're obviously seeing some changes on the QF side as well, as energy policy has changed pretty, dramatically over the last several years. And so there have been significant changes. All in all, I would say energy has been relatively stable since the last filing relative to capacity, and capacity rates have gone up with the attendant increase in the cost of the turbines.
And Glenn, I'll layer on from a contracting perspective. One newer trend, if you will, is projects that are already operational coming in for a renewed or a new PPA as opposed to a new facility. So you likely saw some of the red lines in our contracting documents relate to language for an already operational facility. So that's a newer trend. It's not always a new pre-COD or pre-commercial operation facility.
Interesting. Thank you. In that same light with the CISC, would you talk a little bit, Mr. Schneider, about kind of what numbers, values you found 2 years ago versus the ones that you have today? And maybe that's Ms. Gant as well, but.
No, I think, the updated 2023 CISC did not see significant changes. There were some small changes, and I would have to go and I'll see if I can look here in a second. But I think what we're seeing is, if you think of the CISC, it is the additional cost a QF can impose on the system from the volatility, the sub-hourly volatility, the need for more operating reserves. And so that is often one way to look at it is it's a little bit of the inefficient fuel use. You've got to hold some generation back to be able to respond to these perturbations. That generation is burning fuel. So, but what's also happening as we're adding more resources, solar to the system, the more we add, the higher, all other things equal, the higher that CISC would be. The portfolio itself is changing, right? So as you add more storage, or as you're adding gas units that are more efficient, more flexible, you have a system that is better able to handle these sub-hourly perturbations. And so to the extent, maybe you're seeing a slight increase on one hand because you're adding more and more intermittent resources to the grid that would increase your SISC, you're also adding resources that are capable of dealing with those inefficiencies more efficient. So more battery storage, like I said, or these new turbines have much faster ramp rates, and they're able to adjust, and they're more efficient. So that offsetting effect has left the CISC relatively, in the grand scheme of things, I think we were talking about numbers of $1 and change for both out of a 40-something dollar energy rate. So it's a relatively small percent, and it seems to be stabilizing in there over our last couple of filings.
Nothing further. Yeah, that's good.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the education and the background.
Any further commissioner questions? Hearing none, any redirect from the company?
No redirect from the company.
Thank you very much. All right, you may step down. Thank you. Okay, we need to take about a 10-minute break. If we could, we'll come back, let's say at 10 till 11, 10:50. We're in recess. Good morning again. We are back on the record on 2025-16E and 2025-17E. It's my understanding the company has completed their case, and now the Office of Regulatory Staff is going to present witnesses. Are you doing this as a panel, or is he going to testify and then we bring in your virtual witness?
Correct. They're going to be separate,
Okay.
Mr.
All right.
But
You may proceed.
before ORS starts its case, I just want to make a clarification. In the preliminary matters, excuse me, I entered a stipulation into the record, but failed to enter the company for exhibits into the record as well. So if you allow me to do that at this time,
Okay. All right. They're in the record.
they're all.
Are you
okay.
talking about the exhibits attached to the stipulation?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Well,
So I did it.
we can make that a separate exhibit. Or-
It can be whatever you.
In fact, we'll just it's attached. We'll make it all one exhibit
Okay.
as it is, and that's all part of exhibit number 1.
Thank you. I
Thank
just
you.
wanted to make sure everything was in the record. So appreciate
I
that.
appreciate that.
At this time, ORS calls to the stand witness James Finley Salter.
If you would raise your right hand, Mr. Salter. Do you solemnly affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Salter. Please state your full name for the record.
James Finley Salter.
And by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by the Office of Regulatory Staff as the Deputy Director of Energy Planning and Emerging Technology.
Are you the same James excuse me. My apologies. Are you the same James Finley Salter who prepared or caused to be prepared 9 pages of pre-filed direct testimony in these dockets on June 10th, 2025?
Yes, I am.
Do you have any corrections or edits to your pre-filed testimony?
No.
And if I were to ask you the same questions as those posed in your pre-filed direct testimony today, would your answers be the same?
Yes.
Chair Powers, ORS moves that the pre-filed direct testimony of Mr. Salter be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand.
The pre-filed direct testimony of Mr. Salters will be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand.
And Mr. Salter, did you also pre-file stipulation testimony in this docket on July 18th, 2025?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any edits or corrections to your pre-filed stipulation testimony?
No.
And if I were to ask you the same questions as those posed in your pre-file stipulation testimony today, would your answers be the same?
Yes.
Chair Powers, ORS moves that the pre-file stipulation testimony of Mr. Salter be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand.
The pre-filed stipulation testimony of Mr. Salters will be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand.
Thank you. Mr. Salter, did you prepare a summary of your stipulation testimony?
Yes, I have.
Please present it at this time.
Good morning, Chair and members of the Commission. Subsequent to the filing of ORS testimony, the parties reached a stipulation. The purpose of my stipulation testimony is to support and explain the stipulation. The stipulation reduces the costs associated with litigating the stipulating parties' positions before the Commission and provides an opportunity for the stipulating parties to continue constructive discussions to ensure that future avoided costs and the cost to integrate solar are accurate. The stipulation represents a compromise of all positions put forth by the stipulating parties. Based on my review of the stipulation, ORS believes it is in the public interest and would request the Commission approve the stipulation in its entirety.
Thank you, Mr. Salter. Chair Powers, Mr. Salter is available for questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the company?
No, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any questions from SEBA?
No, thank you.
And I may have skipped you, but SEBA, you have no witnesses to present.
That's correct.
All right, thank you. Commissioner questions? Commissioner Caston?
Thank you. Still morning. Good morning, Mr. Salter.
Good morning.
I don't know if it's splitting hairs or not relative to the, I guess, the three methods, generally accepted methods of avoided cost, proxy unit, the peaker, and I think it's Dominion uses that differential revenue requirement. Does ORS consider those three methodologies best practices or just accepted methodologies? I mean, do you know the answer to that?
Well, as far as industry best practices, I would defer to Witness Ming to discuss that. We recognize that the peaker method, has been a method that this commission has accepted and approved in the past, and there is, and there is consistency to that and stability as in regards to rates.
Okay, thank you. And thinking about the methodologies, and the questions I was asking Mr. Snyder, it seems like it basically comes down to, assumptions in the model, inputs in the model, and such as that. Does ORS get to sufficiently look in the black box? Look at the assumptions, the inputs, and go that deep?
I'm glad you asked that, because that is actually where we found value in the pre-filing engagement with the company during this proceeding or prior to this proceeding, and believe that there's value in agreement in the stipulation that and memorialization that we will meet on certain issues ahead of the next filing as well, because that gives more time and attention for us and our consultants to look into the assumptions and to discuss the assumptions, frankly, with the company to understand their perspective.
Good. And has the company been transparent, forthcoming, and cooperative in those type efforts?
Yes, they have.
Thank you, Mr. Salter. No more questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Caston. Any further commissioner questions? Commissioner Williams.
Thank you, Chair Powers. Good morning.
Good morning.
Have you testified in other avoided cost hearings?
Only in Dominions for this year.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
But not in any prior series of them.
Well, based on that experience and your experience here, do you have any comments to add to the question that I asked of Duke in terms of avoided cost, how it's evolving given the dynamic, to use Mr. Snyder's word, world that this represents?
I did review some of the information from the last filing, and I would agree that the costs are relatively stable. The biggest change I would identify in this filing is that there's actually a fairly substantial increase in capacity during peak seasons that was identified as part of this proceeding due to the need for capacity.
And if I had additional questions about what it is that Duke and ORS will scrutinize before the next and discuss and understand better between now and the next avoided cost hearing, should I ask that of you or should I ask that of Mr. Ming?
I mean, at a high level, I can speak to it. If you want to get into the details, probably good to discuss with Mr. Ming.
High level sounds perfect to me.
Okay.
So I'm really looking at just a better understanding of, and we may have covered it in terms of in your testimony where you talk about the difference between the projected system avoided energy cost and the marginal cost methodology. Is there anything you want to add there in terms of what it is that you all will be seeking to understand in that realm?
Well, Well, one of the major important factors is obviously the assumptions underlining these calculations. So that will be one item that we'll want to discuss and that our consultant will have input on, obviously. Another area of interest is what you really saw in our direct testimony is that our position is that marginal cost is the best practice, is the most accurate. However, the Peaker method has been approved by this commission, multiple times in the past. So to the extent that we can identify that those two values, as they're currently modeled in the future, are within a zone of reasonableness of each other, that could help streamline subsequent proceedings.
And then, thank you, and I appreciate your using the word streamline too, as a goal for what it is that you'll be undertaking. Is that fair to describe that as a goal?
I think that's one of the attributes that the pre-file engagement gets us. I mean, we would like to sort of streamline these processes as much as possible.
And then regarding alternatives for using seasonal and time of day averages and looking at coincidence factor, granular time of use blocks, and effective load carrying capacity, could you talk about that kind of in a broad perspective of what it is that you all will be delving into before the next avoided cost?
Those are longer term issues that I think are going to require fairly substantial discussion with the company. They're different approaches to actually assigning value to these avoided costs and gets into the contracts. So I don't have any details about what exactly we'll talk about, but I think it's positive that we're going to continue discussions there. Our goal in this whole effort is to ensure that avoided costs are fully and accurately identified. So, Mr. Ming will talk about this further, but when we perform our review, that is really our North Star, is ensuring, accuracy. Obviously, that has to be balanced sometimes with simplicity for reasonableness, but accuracy is our overall goal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Salter. Good to see you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. Any further commissioner questions? All right, there are none. You may step down. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Or else we'll call Mr. Zachary Ming to the stand virtually.
All right. Mr. Ming, there you are. Can
Yes.
you hear me okay?
I can hear you great. Good morning. Good afternoon.
Would you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you very much. Your witness.
Mr. Ming, please, is this on? Mr. Ming, please state your full name for the record.
Zachary Ming.
Please provide your occupation and business address.
Yes, I'm a partner at the consulting firm Energy and Environmental Economics, or E3. Our address is 44 Montgomery Street, San Francisco, California.
Thank you. Are you the same Zachary Ming who prepared or caused to be prepared 26 pages of pre-filed direct testimony in these dockets on June 10th, 2025?
Yes, I am.
Mr. Ming, did you also prepare or cause to be prepared one exhibit marked as Exhibit ZM1 filed with your pre-filed direct testimony?
Yes.
Do you have any changes or corrections to this exhibit?
I do not.
Do you have any corrections or edits to your pre-filed direct testimony?
I do not.
If I asked you the same questions as those posed in your direct testimony today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Chair Powers, ORUS asks ORS asks that pre-file direct testimony of Mr. Ming and Exhibit ZM1 be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand.
All right, the pre-file direct testimony of Mr. Ming will be entered into the records if given orally from the stand. The pre-filed exhibit of Mr. Ming, identified as ZM-1, will be entered into the record as exhibit number 5.
Thank you. Mr. Ming, are you aware that Duke Energy Carolinas, Duke Energy Progress, and the Office of Regulatory Staff entered into a stipulation in these dockets on July 2nd, 2025?
Yes, I am aware.
Have you reviewed the stipulation?
Yes, I have.
Based on your review of the stipulation, do you believe the stipulation is a reasonable resolution of the issues in these dockets?
Yes, I do.
Thank you, Mr. Ming. Chair Powers, Mr. Ming is available for questions.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions from the company?
None from the companies, Mr. Chair.
Sasiba?
No questions, thank you.
All right, Commissioner questions. Commissioner Caston.
Morning, Mr. Mean.
Good morning, Commissioner.
Since I asked Mr. Salter and he passed it on to you, I feel obligated to ask. Again, I hope I'm not overcomplicating this, which I well could be, but thinking about these accepted methodologies, Peaker being one of them, I think I've heard uniformly said, I think. And, you know, looking at your direct testimony where you talk about best practices and thinking about what Mr. Snyder said, that you have to, there is a model or models that are used to make all these complex calculations with all these moving parts. And assumptions and data that goes in it is what matters. So having said all that, is it the Peaker method, DRR, proxy, those three at least, the ones that come to mind, are those just considered standard methods that would go into a model, or are they considered best practices for determining avoided costs?
I would say that all of those methods are accepted practices. You might have, in certain situations, you might have one of those methods be a better practice than another method. Like, for example, with a proxy method relies on the calculation of a specific resource that's being avoided and is therefore a bit less technology neutral than, for example, the DRR method or the Peaker method. But in certain situations, those are all accepted practices, or those are all accepted methods that are reasonable in different situations. Where the rubber hits the road is really how you actually implement each of those methods. And to implement any of those methods relies on a number of assumptions, modeling decisions, and other factors. And so, as Mr. Snyder said, the Peaker method, I think, is absolutely a reasonable method. In fact, it might even be my favorite method of the three. But I think where I believe there's room for improvement in the company's calculations is in their specific application of the method, how they're actually implementing it, and in using marginal costs to calculate avoided energy costs.
Okay, and I believe that's what and of course Mr. Snyder's not here to defend himself, but I believe that's what I basically heard him say, and I think Mr. Salter, is it all boils down to the assumptions and the inputs.
Yes, that's correct. And I did hear Mr. Snyder's answer, and I agreed with what he said as well.
Well, I'm sure he's glad to hear that. And I would think that what at least the conversations I've heard or the responses I've heard from Mr. Snyder and Mr. Salter, and I think from you, is going forward, the goal and intent is to continue working on these things before it comes to a hearing, and which gets me, I guess, back to a question I asked Mr. Salter. In your role working for ORS, is that one of the primary purposes of your role, to look into that black box, that mysterious model inputs and assumptions, and that's primarily what you do?
That is a very large role. Yes, there are some details of the modeling process that are provided by the company in their application, and we review those. To the extent that we have additional questions about assumptions, we issue data requests or information requests for those, and those are provided, and we did that in this proceeding as well.
When in your role or experience to date, in your opinion, has Duke been open, transparent, forthcoming, and helpful in your review of those inputs, assumptions?
Yes, they have. And as Mr. Salter said as well, even before this actual proceeding officially got underway, we had pre-filing meetings with Duke, and we were able to come to alignment and agreement on several issues. And that's why, for example, in my testimony in this case, there's very limited recommendations and changes, and largely accepts the company's application and proposals as reasonable.
Well, thank you. This has been very helpful, and I see why Mr. Salter wanted to kick this ball to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Commissioner Belser.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Ming.
Good morning.
You've had an early morning this morning, I take it. Mr. Ming.
No other way.
Despite your recommendations, did I understand your testimony correctly that even despite your recommendations, you found the avoided energy costs, pricing periods, and avoided capacity costs reasonable as
Yes,
proposed by the company?
Yes.
Okay. I noticed in your exhibit that looks like early in your career with E3, you worked on the California Avoided Cost Calculator. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And the description there talks about cost and benefit analysis for demand side programs, but does that in any way does that impact the avoided cost in something like this case? Just wondering how much are you relying on the whatever this mechanism was y'all developed in California with regard to what is happening here in South Carolina?
So the specific method that's used in the California Avoided Cost Calculator is functionally the Peaker method. So it's the exact same methodology that's used by the company in this proceeding. In California, at least that model, that the Avoided Cost Calculator is not used for the purposes of PURPA, but it is used for calculating avoided costs that are used in non-PURPA contexts.
Okay.
And for example, approving energy efficiency budgets and making sure that efficiency programs, the benefits of those programs is greater than the cost, for example.
And so since y'all use the peaker methodology in that calculator, as you just stated, does that support your earlier statement that that's one of your favorite methodologies?
Well, those are probably related, but I do think that the peaker method is very flexible and technology neutral, and so I think it does a very good job of representing marginal cost in the most theoretically economic sense.
So, but as with most things in these industries, the devil's in the details, right? Which really
Yes.
goes into the inputs and assumptions.
Exactly. Yes.
Mr. Ming, thank you for your testimony. Sorry you had such an early morning, but thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Commissioner Belser. Commissioner Williams.
Thank you, Chair Powers. And this may be the last time that I'm speaking publicly, but I just wanted to acknowledge the stipulation and the timing with which we received it, and was very much appreciated. So thank you all. And Mr. Ming, what do you observe about avoided costs and how they're evolving in this dynamic circumstance? And as you participate in other dockets in other states.
Yes, it's a great question. So avoided costs really represent the fundamentals of the costs that utilities are experiencing, and those fundamentals are equally applicable in both regulated jurisdictions like South Carolina, as well as restructured jurisdictions across the country. So in avoided cost proceedings like this one, there are really three components of avoided cost, right? There's energy, capacity, and then integration or ancillary service avoided costs. The biggest one, as Mr. Salter mentioned, is capacity. And one of the biggest changes that's happening in the industry right now is across the country, the industry is transitioning from a period of really surplus and excess capacity to having a capacity need. And that's being driven by a combination of, we have had very flat load for a long time, and load is finally growing again. We have been in conjunction with that flat load, we have been continuing to add lots of resources over the past 20 years, particularly, for example, subsidized renewables have been coming onto the system. So that's been essentially just creating a structural surplus of excess resources. What's happening right now is load is starting to grow, and then we have also resources that are retiring, specifically, namely coal resources are coming off the system. So that supply and demand there's no longer a structural surplus across the country. And that's reflected, for example, in Duke's application, that the year of resource need, the first year of the resource need is now. There are no years in which they don't have a capacity need. And so all of that is causing the avoided cost of capacity to increase, or the monetary value of capacity to the utility to increase. So that's probably the biggest change. On the energy and ancillary service components, there actually is not a huge change in either of those, because those are less driven by the supply and demand factor. In energy in particular, that's primarily driven by the price of fuel, natural gas. Natural gas prices are relatively flat right now compared to where they've been in recent years. And there's also some other dynamics that impact energy prices, like, for example, more renewables coming onto the system actually has the effect of decreasing avoided energy prices. And so as more renewables come onto the system, we generally expect those avoided energy costs to fall. And so that's one factor there. But I would say generally those are relatively constant or flat both in the South Carolina context and across the country. And then, of course, on the ancillary service front, what that avoided cost component is reflecting is the cost of integrating solar onto the system. And the two drivers there are that as you add more and more renewables to a system, the cost of integrating those renewables increases. It's a kind of an exponential function. But at the same time, that's if you just don't change anything. If you just take a system as it is and you just keep adding renewables, you're going to get exponential increases to cost increases to integrate those renewables. But what utilities see is that as you add more and more renewables, there's more and more value to add flexible generation like solar and natural gas. And that's exactly what utilities do. That's what Duke is doing. And the addition of those resources actually drives down the cost of integrating renewables. And right now, that second factor is bigger than the first one. And so so more flexible generation is being added, and that's outweighing the cost increases of just renewables growing themselves. And so generally, you see across the country, the integration cost of renewables is flat to declining right now because so much more flexible generation is coming online. So I think, yeah, to summarize, there's three components. The biggest one that's changing is capacity, which is increasing, and energy and ancillary services are flat to declining.
Thank you. And from you heard me ask the same question of Mr. Salter from his testimony and from his stipulation testimony. But would you talk a little bit about the coincident factor and the granular time of use and the effective load carrying capacity, and how what your hopes are, what the industry suggests might be refinements that you will be considering in the next avoided cost?
Yes. So I would say that right now, what Duke proposes for their implementation of the peaker method is they essentially take a lot of very granular data. For example, they run a model that has a different value of energy and a different value of capacity in every hour of the year. And they take those values and they group them and average them into discrete time periods within each season. But for example, an on-peak period in the winter season really is just an average of a bunch of individual values where some were higher and some were lower. And so what you get in that approach is a simple and implementable method that is reasonable for Duke to implement and bill customers, and it's reasonable for QF PURPA resources to understand the price that they're going to be getting and run their calculations on their end. So I would say it is a accepted practice to implement the way that Duke has done it, but there is the potential within that method that the actual compensation that's flowing to a resource is misaligned from the actual value that it's providing to the system. And what I mean by that is if you are giving the same price in every day of the winter during an on-peak period, for example, like 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. on winter mornings, if you have the same price, but on some days the value is actually much higher, and on some days the value is actually much lower, and the price you're giving is just an average of those two, well, if a resource is much more available on the high value days and less available on the low value days, then it's being undercompensated in the current framework. And you could have a reverse system. If it's much more available on the low value days and not available on the high value days, then it's being overcompensated through an average price. And so what I am recommending that Duke primarily do is, as they if in fact in future proceedings they continue to recommend the same methodology of averaging that they've done in this proceeding, that they actually not just do that, but actually run calculations and say, do we believe that the value that's flowing to QF resources in our construct is consistent with the value that they're actually providing to the system? And to the extent that things change where those two become different, if they actually calculate that a solar or a battery resource is being compensated differently than the actual values providing to the system, then I think it would be worth opening up and looking at, are there ways in which potentially a more complex method that's more accurate would actually be worth it? And so if you look around the country, for example, some of the restructured markets like PJM and others have implemented more complex methods, for example, for valuing the capacity that resources provide. They don't do simple time window averaging. They actually do an ELCC, effective load carrying capability methodology, to quantify the capacity that resources are providing to the system. And so the question here is, what is the additional benefits that would be provided by implementing such a method relative to the obvious complexities of changing to that type of a method? So there are lots of considerations in that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the answer and appreciate your being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. Commissioner Caston.
Mr. Ming, a couple things you said kind of, caused me to want to follow up on those, if I may. The last part where you were talking with Commissioner Carol Williams relative to maybe something more complex, and I think I followed what you said. And if you'll bear with me for a moment, I remember in my early days, there was this structural design called, I think, infinitesimal something. Looking at infinitesimal, small things that you could design the slab for, and from an engineering perspective, it made sense and it worked. From a practical point of view, I mean, physically doing it, made it almost not doable. And I'm not saying this would be this way, but I guess what I'm asking is, how complex should it be? And I'm assuming that's what the discussions would go into, whether you do it to some, hourly minutia per second. I mean, those things can always be done, but how do you determine where the benefit cost drops off?
Right. I think the primary metric to determine how much complexity needs to be added really falls out of a comparison of, okay, if I continue to do it based on a time window averaging approach and look at what is the compensation that QF resources receive under that approach versus what is the actual value that's being provided to the system. And those under the current method are not going to be exactly aligned. Hopefully they're pretty close, but they're not going to be exactly aligned. So the question is really, are those within the range of reasonableness? Are they within, something like plus or minus 10% of each other? If you were to start to see very large differences where, for example, the time averaging approach was 30–40% higher than the actual calculated value of the system, then I think that would be a cause for reopening up that approach. Another factor is that the quantity of resources that are being compensated under this method is also a factor. So again, the goal of PURPA is to really to ensure that ratepayers are who ultimately pay the PURPA rates, that ratepayers are indifferent and that the prices that they're paying is equal to the value. And so if you have, for example, a 10% difference, but that 10% is applied to a very, very large quantity of PURPA resources, then the total dollar amount that's ultimately being borne by ratepayers could also be fairly large. Whereas, for example, if you have a 30% difference, but that in compensation and value, but there are only a very small number of PURPA resources that difference is being applied to, then the total dollar amount that are being borne by ratepayers could be fairly small. So I think it a lot has to do with comparing the compensation and value of resources, as well as looking at the total quantity of PURPA resources that are being compensated through this mechanism. And it's ultimately a subjective assessment of is the differences between those two in total dollar amount, is that a reasonable value, or would it be better served through potentially something more complex but more accurate? And I fully agree with your point that one of the principles of all of this is to make sure that whatever method is selected is actually implementable. And it does nobody any good to just put forward an academic theoretical model. But for example, if you look at a method like effective load carrying capability, that is a method that many markets have moved to in recent years precisely for this reason, to get more accurate estimations of the value of capacity that resources are providing. So I think while it is admittedly more complex, it is an implementable method.
Thank you. And I'm here in a couple of years. It'll be interesting to see what you guys come up with. Finally, also I think in response to Commissioner Carol Lee Williams' questions, you had mentioned something about, I guess, growth in demand, I guess in combination with sources retiring or rolling off. And as I understand it, that the growth in demand from the residential side is still relatively flat, I guess, across the country.
I think it depends on the jurisdiction. Yeah, there are some jurisdictions where electric vehicles are causing residential demand to tick up, but certainly that factor is smaller than what you see from data center growth, for example.
Well, not that I don't care about other states, but I'm primarily focused on South Carolina.
Yes.
So that's kind of my understanding from that, as far as demand from residential energy demand is still relatively flat. Is that a fair statement in South Carolina?
That is consistent with what I understand, yes.
And as generation rolls off, I assume through retirement, the generation sources that's available will be reduced, but they would not or should not be reduced. You shouldn't retire something until you have something to replace it, correct?
I think that is a fairly nuanced question. For example, if you have surplus capacity, then you could retire something without replacing it. But if you're right at supply and demand balance, then yes, correct.
Yeah, I agree. I understand that. But what I think we've heard through the course of maybe the last year or so is an increase in demand, a pretty significant increase in demand, whether that's because of artificial intelligence or these data centers. And I guess that's, hearing your response to Commissioner Williams, I was trying to reconcile that in my mind, and that did this increase in demand, did it occur in the last year, the last 2 years? Is it physically occurring now? I'm really trying to understand that.
Right. Well, I guess the first thing is that demand has started to increase in recent years, but really the growth in demand that I think is relevant for this proceeding is what's forecasted to happen over the next 10 years, because these avoided cost proceedings are looking up to 10 years in the future and looking at that forecasted demand. So I think we're right on the precipice of it, but we have not seen like doubling of demand in the past year. There have been, 10% growth in demand in recent years.
All right. Mr. Ming, thank you for your patience. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Caston. Any further commissioner questions? Mr. Rasmussen, any redirect at this time?
Mr. Ming, do you recall stating that reviewing the methodologies is a subjective exercise?
Yes.
Wonderful. Would you agree that after reviewing ORS and Duke's methodologies, stipulating parties would have an objective to address and an opportunity to address this before the next avoided cost filing?
Sorry, could you repeat that one more time, please?
Sure. Would you agree that after reviewing ORS and Duke's methodologies, would the stipulating parties have as an opportunity and as an objective, given how we've gone through this so far, to address these methodology issues before the next avoided cost filing?
Yes, I would agree with that.
Wonderful. No more questions.
Thank you, Mr. Rasmussen. In response to that, any questions from the parties?
None from the companies. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sasiba. All right. Any further commissioner questions based on the redirect? All right. Hearing none, is anything further from any party at this time?
Nothing from the companies. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Of course, as you're aware, the hearing does not end today. We have the independent third-party expert who will submit a report and will be scheduled to testify Thursday, September 25th, 2025 at 10 a.m. So we will recess until 10 a.m. Thursday, September 25th, 2025. Mr. Will.
Pardon to keep us, and this feels like a silly question, but it feels procedurally important. Are our witnesses excused from the stand such that we may consult with them between now and then?
Do they want to be?
Yes, sir, they do.
All right. Everybody's excused from the stand.
Thank you, sir.
And we are in recess. Thank you.